Welcome to the Zachrilege Cast podcast, YouTube video interview program that features me talking to some of the best and brightest in the atheist / secular / awesome community. This is episode number 54. We are recording live on April 21st, 2016. First, I would like to thank Chris Hanna and Christopher Tanner from Cellar Door Skeptics for being on last week and for inspiring the amazing Michigan beer selection I had on the show. So tonight we bring on Morgan Stringer. She started her online atheist activism as a guest on the No Religion Required podcast, and she graduated to full-time co-host. She's a law student at the University of Mississippi and is about to take a fabulous cross-Atlantic journey to England. She writes for Moving the Fig Leaf and BamSouth.com, and she's on right now. Morgan, say hey, y'all.
Hey, y'all.
Want to see if you
I
can
don't do it quite as well as Miss Ashley.
I know, she has a way.
I know.
Thanks for being on and adjusting our schedule so it works for everybody. Could you start tonight? Can I just talking about like your personal religious background, like where you came from?
Okay, well, I had a very unusual religious background in that I guess a lot of it was the same as most people. You know, my parents were Southern Baptists, but then my grandmother was more Methodist Episcopalian, so I kind of got a mix of those. And then my dad in recent years has left sort of towards the Happy Jesus kind of church, and he goes to one of the mega churches in Jackson, Mississippi. I call it Six Flags Over Jesus. But yeah, and I ended up actually going to a crazy fundamental evangelical boarding academy. And that was, they claimed they were non-denominational, but they were Presbyterian, but they were so hardcore that actually the normal Presbyterian sect, the mainstream sect, actually split off from them because they considered some of their beliefs too extreme and just that they had no place in modern times.
Yeah, so when did you...
I kind of went from that... Yeah, I went from that to sort of, and I questioned a little bit, but I would always give myself some, I guess I had some cognitive dissonance. I'd be like, oh, well, I just have to have faith and all this stuff, I just have to have faith. And, I kept kind of going. And then I became more of a liberal Christian as opposed to a conservative, evangelical Christian, as I call them, and more back into that Episcopalian. And then I sort of just started, as I, got into, I guess, left French camp and got into, I guess, the real world, as you would call it. And then I went from, being a liberal Christian to believing that, oh, well, if you're good, whatever you are, then you go to heaven, and then to being a deist, to being an agnostic, and then finally to atheist. And I think my agnostic stage was really just me word atheist because I did come from French camp and such a fundamental background that, atheists were bad people and was a bad person. So, and also I didn't want to freak everybody around me out, living in Mississippi. So I just kind of hid behind the word agnostic. And then I started actually listening to more and more atheist podcasts. And then eventually it was like, fuck it, I'm an atheist.
Yeah, we're bad.
So that's kind of where people. My journey went.
I think you realized.
Yeah, I know.
I was
people.
Maybe you're kind of bad people. I don't know.
I don't know. Depends on who you ask.
Well, what was it like? You talked about, like, when you were on No Religion Required, your first appearance, you talked about French camp. What was that experience like? What can the outsider glean about what it was like to be there and experience that?
Okay, well, to the outsiders, they present a view or an image, I guess, that they are a place that helps kids who come from bad situations, such as there were kids that, their parents were drug addicts, they were just absent parents, grandparents just couldn't take care of them, things like that. But then there are people like me where, my parents just sort of didn't know what to do with me because I was dealing with depression and things like that at the time. I was getting bullied a lot, things like that. It seemed, a good option to them because they said, oh, we're good Christian people and, we'll provide a good Christian environment at school and at home. And to most people, especially in Mississippi, that sounds like, oh, that's great. That's awesome. You're showing all these kids things like that. But when you're actually in it, you start to see more of a man, especially, and actually, I had Rakeem Johnson's show not too long ago. He actually lived in a town, so he could sort of see even more of the messed up things that I guess I was shielded from to an extent. You know, like corruption with the staff, things like that. But it was extreme. I mean, we went to every morning at our dorm, because I lived there too and went to school there. All my teachers talked about Jesus all the time in every class. I had to Wednesday every morning Jesus. And
That's a lot of Jesus.
yeah, it was. And I mean, it was literally, Jesus was supposed to be involved in everything. Like, there was a couple that even told us, you know, oh, we pray every time before we. And I remember even still being a Christian in that mindset, I was still like, okay, that's a little weird, you know. But it was, and we would have to go to these events where there were things like, this guy would ride a horse, and I think you probably heard this before, but he would ride a horse, and he would basically break a wild horse. You know, this horse was all happy, running in the grass, and then he would tell us, "It break you, you know, until you're good, basically." And, you know, within a few hours, like, completely break the horse until the horse was just tired. And just looking back, I just remember how awful. Yeah. I have a lot of messed up baggage from that place, for sure, but, you know, I'm getting through it.
Yeah, I think as someone who grew up with no religious background at all, and thank you, parents, for not doing that, just to hear the stories of people who've gotten out just still amaze me every time I hear it. But there's that unique flavor from each one. So what's it like? I mean, you're at the University of Mississippi. Is it kind of a liberal, like, since I'm in Atlanta, I'm like in a little blue dot in a red state? Are you in a much smaller blue dot in a red state?
I would say for the most part, it is. I mean, Oxford is by far way more progressive than the rest of Mississippi, but it's still, you know, I'm still more liberal than your average Oxonian. I mean, I guess it's more of a blue dog kind of Democrats, where they're still conservative, but they're liberal in others. You know, people for the most part are accepting of gay people, but then you still have those hardcore Baptists, you know, so there's kind of a balance to it. But when I tell people, like today, for instance, me and my friends were at the law school, and one said, oh yeah, are you an atheist? And I was like, yeah, and nobody cared. You know, in other parts of Mississippi, they would, you know, try to beat me up or something. So it's very, very different here. I feel as if I am able to be more open up here as opposed to other parts of the state, for sure.
So how did you end up kind of latching on to No Religion Required, like becoming a fan of the show, appearing on the show, and then becoming the fourth horse person of the show?
Yes. Well, I was listening to Cognitive Dissonance. Cognitive Dissonance is actually the first atheist podcast I ever found. I found that podcast actually when I was still a deist through a friend of mine in Oxford who listened to it. It was just hilarious.
I think that's,
yeah.
I should ask that question. Like, everybody who becomes an atheist who's a Christian, like, what show did you start with? Because a lot of people start with like Atheist Experience, which has a lot of Christians on there, but in Cognitive Dissonance, they throw you in the deep end to see if you can swim.
Yeah, and it did. I mean, that sort of is what accelerated my conversion, I guess, deconversion into atheism, I guess. I know some people don't like that word, but, you know, just being thrown into the deep end like that and being forced to look at my own cognitive dissonance in a way. But, yeah, so I started off with that one, and I heard Bobby C. and Miss Ashley on the show, and I was like, awesome, they're Southern atheists, you know, that is just badass. So I became a fan of the show, just listening on iTunes when I could and things like that, and then I decided to check it out live and get in the chat room and things like that. So I would, interact with people in the chat room of a live show. I felt like I had found a community there with those other listeners, and I felt like I had, sort of a family that was a big atheist family that loves and supports me. It was just really awesome. And Bobby C was doing a thing where he was calling listeners randomly throughout an episode, and he called me, and he was like, "Oh, that's so awesome, you're in law school." And I made a comment sort of like, "Yeah, not bad for a girl that went to a fundamental boarding school." And he was just like, "Wait, hold on," because I guess he had no idea that I was in that system, and so he wanted to hear about it. Later, went it up, and I became a guest on them about French camp and everything like that. And when I was talking about my experience at French camp they made you work. All the dorm kids, not all the kids, because there were also kids that went to school there that lived in a community. But part of the work program was you'd have these different assignments. And I remember seeing radio station. Like, they had a job opening for radio station, and I was working in the kitchens at the time, and I was like, "Oh, radio station, I get to broadcast." I was thinking things like that. And they were like, I got there, and I was super excited. I was going to have my voice heard and things like that. It's just something I always wanted to do. And they gave me a broom and said, "Clean it." So I just remember being super disappointed that, and again, that goes to the whole French camp, women, you clean and cook and do all that. It's very much that gender binary, and women are supposed to be subservient to men. But so, yeah, my voice could not be heard. They would ironically have women DJs, but not dorm kids. They would never let a dorm kid be on there. So I was telling Bobby about that, and I just mentioned it in passing on the show, and he called me. He called and says, "Hey, do you want to be a co-host? Me and Miss Ashley were talking about it, and we think you'd be a really great addition to the show." And I accepted because, like I said, this has always been like a huge dream of mine. So I went to there.
That's pretty awesome that you're there. Well, what do you think?
Yeah, I love it.
It's tough to ask this kind of question, but just as someone who, grew up religious, and knowing that women were treated this negative way, have you had similar issues kind of in, the atheist community itself?
Yeah, I have sort of had the issues where people will, I don't go on Reddit really anymore because I got so tired of seeing it. Sexism, sexist remark after sexist remark. Oh, rape culture's a myth. Oh, feminism isn't needed. Why don't you just call it egalitarian? That sort of, nonsense, in my view anyway. And I just got tired of seeing it, so I left, I haven't been on Reddit for a while. The only reason I go on Reddit now is to look at, like, cute puppies and stuff. But, yeah, definitely part of that Reddit atheist community. I never actually joined in it, but I kept saying comment after comment and just felt really unwelcome by that. And really, I see more of a sexism from, people with religious views still, but I do see it from people who say things like, "Oh, well, there's no pay gap. Oh, there's no, sexism anymore," which I'm like, that's, a completely ridiculous thing to say.
Is that a bit of a letdown, or is that just kind of what's to be expected? Like, you join a group of people and you're like, "These are my people," and then you find out maybe not all of them are my people.
It was a big letdown because I thought that, seeing a community like NRR, and I hear people like scathing atheists, and they have Lucinda on, things like that. So I thought atheists for the most part were, like, yay, gender equality. And I was like, awesome, I can be with like-minded people. And then I get into the community and I see this massive division between, I guess, the humanist camp over here, and then you have the, I guess the more eugenicist type, not all people are equal because of evolution camp over there. And, that was very disappointing for me. I realize that people are all not going to agree on the same things, but I thought that, as far as if you don't believe in God and don't believe that women are inherently subservient, that you have a basis for that belief, but I guess some people make one.
I guess the societal place still exists, but it's...
Yeah, it's like people think that once they have atheism, they're like, "Oh, yeah, well, I figured it all out." I know that religion's the big lie, and then after that they stop questioning norm, things like that. And I just thought it'd be very disappointing. I think that everybody would be more skeptical of other social activities, I guess.
Yeah, you have to keep that. It's tough. I mean, we'll get into the whole football thing later, but that's one area in life where you just get in and people just throw their skepticism aside when it comes to this one part of their life. And maybe that's for good or for bad. But I wondered if we could talk. Like you said, you ended your GoFundMe today. So talk about the opportunity
I haven't
you have,
actually.
or you're ending it shortly. Your GoFundMe about Cambridge. What about that opportunity and going from Oxford to Cambridge?
Okay, well, I'm in Oxford, Mississippi, not Oxford, England. Just for your listeners, that might be confusing. Yeah, so I have this opportunity in England over the summer to go study some international law. And I thought this would be an amazing opportunity because I did used to live in Iceland, but I was very young when I lived there. My dad was in the Air Force, which is kind of why I was there, but I've never done anything like go to Europe or anything like that. I went to French Camp Academy in the middle of Choctaw County, Mississippi at a evangelical boarding school. I never thought I'd ever get to go to Europe or anything. And, well, I really wanted to go, so I applied. And then I find out, you don't get your financial aid for it until 5 days before you start your classes. So they basically were like, yeah, you have to get your flight plans, like, on your own. So I figured out, I was talking to Bobby, and I said, I thought I was really going to go. I was really excited about this, and now I'm kind of disappointed. And he said, we'll start up a GoFundMe. And at first, I was expecting to get maybe like $200 from it or something like that, because I understand money's tight, and, there's other causes that I felt like are way worthier than mine. But I started it, and I've actually exceeded my goal. I've raised about $2,290. And my goal was just, I threw out $2,000 out there because I would get my tickets there and my ticket back here to America. So the listeners really responded. I mean, I've got varying donations, everything from $10 to $905. And just my listeners are so awesome, and I just love them so much. I'm just so grateful for everything they've done for me. And like I said, they are truly my family.
Yeah, it's true. You do have the family. You're born within the family. You kind of obtain later in life, and those are good people. And I'm glad you'll be able to make the trip, and we're glad that you will be returning to the U.S. because you'll be like, yeah, I'm out of here. You deal with you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I kind of need to come back, so it's a relief.
So I listened to you. You were on the By Any Means podcast. What was it like for you, the varying degrees of like coming out as bisexual as opposed to coming out as atheist?
Well, I feel like being bisexual in the South is a different problem. I mean, it very much still is a problem, but it's just because, the gay community doesn't really accept you as much because you can still pass for straight. Or they, just you're either gay or you're nothing, basically. That's getting a lot better now, how I've kind of felt by certain gay communities and groups and things like that. But then with straight people, they say, oh, you do it and you're faking it. Which one are you? Or they'll, or like I said, the gay people will be like, oh, well, you're just, hiding who you really are, things like that. Like, I cannot be in between, I guess, because being bisexual is not in that binary. It's not it doesn't fit into a neat category. You're not like, I'm either this or you're either that, middle, in a sliding scale. I think that does make people uncomfortable. And, there's still very much people here in the Bible Belt, that are like, oh, any degree of being gay is wrong. So, I mean, but actually, I think being an atheist is way more difficult because at least here you have more Christians that are more accepting of people being gay and bisexual. But then if you tell them, oh, I'm an atheist, I think that's way more. Because then you're essentially godless to them. And they say the typical things like, oh, where do you get your morals from and things like that. And I guess me being out, sort of, it's in varying degrees. I'm actually way more out in Oxford than I would be Mississippi. just because of that stigma, and now it's very much so legal to discriminate against people in the LGBT community, have really dire consequences. Like doctors can refuse me medical treatment, you know, and if you're the only doctor in some little town in Mississippi and say I'm in a wreck, you know. So, I mean, it's different, but I would say definitely being an atheist is more difficult. But for different reasons, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. And I don't know. There's some way to make a comparison point, but I mean, really, when it comes down to it, I mean, you're straight, 100%, gay, 100%. Most people are somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, most people are, and I feel like just that perception and me being so, you know, like, hey, I'm accepting that most people are in the middle, and I am one of those people very much in the middle, and I guess that does make people, like I said, uncomfortable because everybody likes these neat little boxes that we all fit neatly in, and here I am on a, you know, not wanting to be put in one of those boxes.
Yeah, I mean, and for me personally, it's like, I'm the white male middle class, so I fit everywhere, and then all of a sudden I throw the atheist thing out, and it's like, uh-oh, wait a second. But that's just one thing, and trust me, I can pass as Christian. Well, I don't know if I can. I was driving back from a job interview today, and there was this kind of like radio tower, and on top of the tower there was a cross. And I was like, wow, I haven't seen that before. Way to go, Georgia, you know. But that's just... It's just the being in the South. I live in Atlanta, so it's a little bit.
I used to live in Atlanta.
We have a lot of churches. Trust me.
Oh, I remember. And even in small towns in Mississippi, there's at least 3 to 4, maybe more churches, and it's crazy because some of these towns have only, you know, like 500 people, maybe less. French Camp had 2 churches in it, and the population was literally like less than 200. So, and there were other towns that surrounded it that had even more churches. It was just kind of, it's always kind of insane to me to think of how many churches we have, and I don't know, it just seems weird. It's good money making though, so.
Yeah, no matter how poor the community is, they're going to have a church, and that church is going to be like immaculate. It's going to be kept up well.
Yes, and they're going to take 10% of anybody's income regardless. That's another thing I saw at French Camp. I would see, you know, these old people who couldn't even afford their own health care needs at the church that I had to go to. And I would just, you know, be appalled that somebody could take that money. You know, it's appalling to me to see how many of the churches here take such advantage of people, especially there is more of the, I guess you've heard of the prosperity gospel. Mm-hmm. There's some of those churches that are very much popping up, and they're telling these people, you know, hey, give me 10% of your income and, you know, God will bless you with way more money. And, you know, Mississippi is the poorest state in the country. Like, there's not one of the poorest, it is the poorest state in the country. And just seeing these people who can't have access to, you know, Medicaid benefits because, you know, the governor cut those too because their governor is awful. And he, you know, yeah, he's awful. My uncle was governor of Mississippi, actually, Cliff Finch, but that was back in, I just imagine he's rolling in his grave right now if he could see the ridiculousness of this legislature and the governor has become. I mean, it's like we've always been kind of more backwater, but we've reached new heights. It's like we're trying to compete with all the other states once they start passing terrible laws to see who can be the worst.
Well, I do
it's like as soon as North Carolina passed their law, we were like, what you do to be even more terrible?
Yeah, I always feel like Georgia, I mean, I know there's this like conservative think tank, like kind of playbook that the southern states are playing, but Georgia always follows. Like they always copy other states. Like Georgia's never leading, and our governor actually vetoed the anti-LGBT law, which is kind of surprising, but we do have a lot of business interests involved.
Yeah. You have business interests, and that's another thing that I guess, I mean, other businesses that are in Mississippi said we oppose this bill. But basically what the governor did was he just doesn't care. We're already the poorest state in the nation. You know, how far can we fall? Yeah. We're not Georgia with a big city like Atlanta that has businesses that could legitimately cripple our economy. Economy's already crippled. And on top of that, the governor is also giving ludicrous corporate tax breaks to corporations, meanwhile not expanding Medicaid, refusing to fully fund the mental health services here in the state. It's just blowing. So I guess he's using those corporate tax cuts, I guess, to entice more business, but I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's a hellhole for the people who are actually living here. And God forbid, you're a single mom here. I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, could you talk about the law that they just passed? And I don't know if there are multiple laws, because I know there was the we can discriminate against gay people law, but it also included if you're not married and having sex, it's bad. And then there was the guns in churches law. I mean, let us know. You're on the inside. You know the legalese and
yes.
Describe what's happening.
Yeah, what is happening is a great question. Well, in Mississippi also, there is a senator that I actually, she taught at a women's political leadership conference, and Senator Sally Doty actually introduced a bill recently that would list domestic violence among one of the reasons a woman can get divorced in Mississippi, because that is not grounds for divorce in this state. Now, you can usually file another ground of divorce because usually there's other things involved, but if your husband hits you and you're in the courtroom crying with mascara running down your face, that ain't good enough, sweetheart. That's basically what the judge is going to tell you. So there was a bill that was going to do that. It died yesterday. They killed it. For what reason, I have no idea. I guess it's, God's duty to man to beat his wife, whatever. So yeah, they're doing terrible things like that, like killing good laws, but then they're set on pushing these really bad ones. So the HB 1523 one is one that says business owners have a right to refuse service based on their religion or morality. I guess I think that's going to be a way to get around that establishment clause, because they could, I guess, technically claim, oh, well, if an atheist doesn't agree with gay marriage, then they can technically discriminate too. But I don't think the courts are going to buy that argument. But they say based on a moral conviction, you can refuse service to people who are lesbian, gay, transgender. They also said you could really discriminate on any basis, really, because if you think about it, back in the days of segregation, Mississippi defied integration on a religious basis because they said, well, the Bible says our races shouldn't commingle. So this bill would also allow somebody, if they wanted to bring that argument up, that hasn't really been discussed much, but it seems very intent on the specificity of the bill to target the LGBT community. It makes that clear in the definition section because they say marriage should be between a man and a woman. They say that a person's gender is what they were assigned at birth. And they say that sexual relations should only take place between a man and a woman. And based on that those definition sections is what's also very troubling, because it's very clear that they have a religious agenda in this bill. They are not even, I guess, trying to hide it, really. I mean, they just don't use a ton of Jesus language, and I guess they thought that'd be better. But a lot of them are saying, oh, well, this is business owners' rights, things like that. But again, what if a lot of places in Mississippi only have one doctor? What if that one doctor refuses to treat you because it allows doctors to refuse medical care? Say I get a job at a firm, I could be fired for wearing pants if my boss says, oh, that's my moral belief that women shouldn't wear pants. It's ridiculous. You can also say you refuse hotel rooms to couples if you think they're having sex and they're not married. You can say, oh, well, you can't stay here. Also applies to gay couples. I mean, say I'm winning activist bill is how they know people are LGBT or things like that. I guess it's if they believe they are, it's okay, which again is very troubling because again, they're wanting to put people in these specific gender boxes, as I call them. They're wanting people to behave and perceived as a certain way, which is straight, Christian, heterosexual, the whole deal, married. That's what they want, and that's what they're essentially legislating. And Mississippi legislature has over and over been, forced religion down the state's throat. And the majority of people here are still very much Christian, but, you know, it's even gotten to the point where other Christians are sick of it. Because they're saying, oh, well, I don't believe there's anything wrong with gay people, or there's, you know, gay Christians that live here, and bisexual Christians and transgender Christians I know of, and they, you know, feel as if this bill does not reflect their values. And there are many atheists that don't feel as if it reflects their values. Because, again, our schools here, I'm sure you've heard of Rankin County School District, just keeps having to pay money because they cannot understand the Establishment Clause. They continuously invite preachers to speak at school events that are mandatory, things like that, continuing to preach to students, and the legislature turns a blind eye to that. And you're talking about the gun law for the churches? That law essentially says that churches can form a task force, a security task force, and they will be armed. And basically, if they shoot somebody, it's justifiable homicide. They have less oversight than the police do, and the police already have very, very little oversight, especially in Mississippi, where there's really a lot of our judges are elected, and actually the requirement to be a judge, a lower level judge in many courts and in many counties in Mississippi, I think in every county, you have to have a high school diploma. So I will have a higher education level than many of the judges in Mississippi, and I will be making legal arguments, and they will have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. I've had a lawyer friend that a judge told him, don't talk about the U.S. Constitution in my courtroom, it doesn't apply. So, you know, you just have these people that have zero legal knowledge that are just running the state. I mean, it's everything from the, I mean, thankfully we have very good federal judges and very good, I guess, upper level state judges, but and some very good lower level judges as well. But in some of these more backwater counties, you're seeing more and more of that, and it's very concerning when churches in those backwater counties, you know, they're going to shoot somebody, and then the judge is going to say justifiable homicide. I mean, it says it in the law itself that it will be justifiable homicide, and that's just very troubling because, I mean, it's automatic. The bill.
Yeah, it's like, welcome to our reality and what the fuck is going on. But
yeah, as an atheist, I will guarantee you I am not setting foot near any churches because who knows, they might, I mean, I guess this bill, they're saying the intention is to stop people from robbing churches, but I don't see this as a, yeah, exactly. When does that happen? I mean, I heard about a couple of cases where some, you know, drunk kids would break in and because nothing to do, whatever, you stole $5, congrats. But now they're saying, oh, well, they need to be armed and shoot people. And I guess they got this pushed through with the Dillon situation in South Carolina, where he came in and shot people in a church. And that's been their basis for, oh, this is why we need this law. This is why we need armed church task forces. But which this makes no sense to me because Mississippi already has concealed carry. You know, so this just seems, again, it's a needless law just to show that we, the Christians, are the majority, and all of you people who disagree need to shut up and sit down and take it.
Yeah, so how much longer do you have in school? And once you get out, like, how many seconds are going to pass till you leave? Are you going to be a Bobby and Ashley and like, I'm staying and I'm going to try to make a difference?
Well, one of my dear friends, he goes to, I consider him a family friend and a friend of mine, Cliff Johnson. He works at the law school, actually. He used to go to my grandmother's church in Clinton, so he's known me since I was a girl. But he wants me to stay. He runs the MacArthur Justice Clinic here at Ole Miss that's helping the people that are, you know, disadvantaged, that need legal help, that have, you know, good cases, things like that. He's trying to help those people. And, you know, our legal system in Mississippi is completely screwed up, as you can see from all these bad laws. And he's doing things like speaking out against these laws. You know, we were at a protest rally together yesterday on campus. And so these people, I mean, I see where they're coming from, that, you know, a lot of educators are just begging people, stay, please stay, we need you. But there's come a point, I guess, in my life where I'm on the fence about it. I really am. Like, part of me feels bad about leaving, but I know realistically will, because I need to give myself my best chance. And if maybe I'll come back, maybe I'll do some kind of summer of '69 thing, where I come down for a summer and just help people. But just living in it, I can't anymore. There's just come that point where it's been law after law after law. I even wrote a letter to the governor in an email saying, if you pass HB 1523, I will, once I get my law degree, I'm gone. And I'm not the only one. There is a mass exodus happening of young Southerners, and I'm sure Mississippi is not the only state where this is happening, but Mississippi is one of the major states. And some people, they can only afford to move as far away as things like Atlanta or even Memphis, things like that. But it's a step out to a lot of people, because they're like, at least I'm not in freaking Mississippi.
I know, as a beer aficionado, Mississippi and Georgia are the only two states that don't allow beer sales at the brewery, which is just wrong. That's totally
I actually don't know that law. I mean, I've never toured a brewery, but we have some good breweries here. What is a shame. Like, we have some badass food and drink and, we're some of the most friendly people you will ever meet. And then there's all these bigots that just are running our government. And, I get told, and some of the locals are as well, because, there's somebody that's voting them back in. But, I see a very much division in the state. There's a big division in the country itself, but in the state where there's people who are, I guess, you're hardcore conservative, screw you. If you don't like it, leave. I've been told, if I don't like it, leave. And I wasn't born here. I was born in Oklahoma, but my dad was born here. My parents are from here. I've lived here since 1999. Like, screw you. This is my home, too. You leave. I'm like, why is that argument valid against me? But, there's those people. But then there's the other people that are just so open and loving and, Southern, and just they're loving people. And that's, again, it's the difficulty of wanting to stay or leave, because I want to stay and help those people, but at the same time, they all tell me, we don't blame you if you go.
Yeah, my wife is big in the literary scene, and she went to grad school in, like, Oxford, Mississippi is one of those towns, that everybody likes to flock to. So there's that side of it. I don't even know if it's possible for you to answer this question, but it's kind of like, what is it about the Southern identity that allows this kind of bigotry to be part of someone's, like, identity? You go to University of Mississippi football games. I don't know if people still fly Confederate flags at the games, but I know they want to.
Oh, no. Mm-mm. There are students that will actually beat you up if you start flying a Confederate flag, because a lot of the students are so tired of people saying Ole Miss and associating it with, the riots when James Meredith integrated the school, with, backwater racism. Last year we had an incident where 2 frat boys from Georgia, Mississippi, but they hung a noose on the statue we have of James Meredith, who's a civil rights leader. And they left before we had the chance to kick them out, because a lot of people knew their names and they skipped town, which probably would have been wise. But, they hung the old Georgia flag, which I don't know if you remember, but it is the Confederate flag with, like, a tiny little blue strip on the side.
Yeah.
And there are still some people like that, and people bitch about bring back Colonel Reb, whatever. And at first I didn't get why they banned Colonel Reb either. But now that I guess I've become more understanding and listened to people, I'm like, okay, I get it, because people have, use that as sort of an excuse to be like, yay, Old South, yay, bigotry, and yay, racism. And the part of the Southern identity very much is still tied to the Confederacy, which is why I completely oppose our state flag, because Mississippi is, I think, the only state now that has the Confederate flag as part of its state flag. It's literally in the corner, it's the Confederate flag, and then it's 3 stripes, red, white, and blue. And there was a vote back in 2001, and they decided to keep it the way it is. But since then, a lot of people have changed their minds, and I've noticed the legislature is still very scared to put it to a vote, because they don't know how that will turn out. because a lot of people see arguments now that, hey, you know, a business isn't going to come in if your state flag looks like you're still part of the Confederacy. You know, that's just not very welcoming to most people. And part of that Southern identity is, I guess, because they all still think, you know, it's like the lie they said back in the Civil War. They would tell soldiers, you know, hey, you need to fight for this way of life because, hey, one day maybe you can make it big and you can have your own plantation and you can have slaves in a big mansion like me. And that's how they would trick, you know, the majority of dirt poor Southerners into fighting this war for them. But I think they've passed that lie down generation after generation to where so many people now think, oh, well, it's because of those Yankee oppressors why we're so dirt poor. It's because General Sherman came down, you know, burned everything to the ground. You know, they still call Jackson Chimneyville because he burnt that city to the ground. And I still feel like over the generations, there's still been this anger over that, very much so. So part of the Southern identity is, you know, screw the federal government, but we sure will take your money. That's a lot of people don't realize, too. You know, Mississippians will hate on the federal government, but then, you know, we get, I think, $5 back for every $1 we send to Washington. We would not exist if it wasn't for other taxpayers. So I think this is a very bold move by the Mississippi legislature to spit in the federal government's face about marriage equality when we rely on them so much for everything we have. And, you know, but that's part of that Southern identity, right? You got to fight against the power. You got to fight against the feds. But then in their own system, it's not necessarily fight the power because they still have that Christian majority. You know, they don't mind using their authoritarianism on others, but once they have I guess what they would perceive as authoritarianism pushed on them, they have to fight back because that's our Confederate legacy. Still think that a lot of that Southern identity where that allows that bigotry and hatred does come from that legacy of, you know, I guess being to the Confederacy. You know, first it was, oh, well, it's because they came down here to free some black people, so let's oppress black people. Oh, now they're telling us that, you know, gays can get married, so let's push up on gays. You know, and it's been, they see people that are trying to change the state also, they keep saying it's Yankee oppressors. You know, they're very much fan of that term. It's been used since the Civil War, right? You know, the Yankee oppressors coming to, you know, beat the South.
Yeah, we're about 150 years past the carpetbaggers, by the way. Yankee.
Yeah, past the carpetbaggers, but that's been a tradition, you know. But it's still a tradition because, you know, they saw the summer of '69, you know, a bunch of Yankees coming down here to register black people to vote. And then, you know, there's still carpetbaggers coming down. And now they're seeing these people pushing back against these bills, and they're saying, oh, well, they're Yankee oppressors. If they don't like it, leave. But what they're failing to realize is there are actually Southern liberals. I'm very much a Southerner. I mean, you hear it. I'm very much a Southerner. But they, you know, have this perception that it's all outsiders, you know, those outside agitators that are coming in to, you know, take their way of life and things like that. And that's why they're holding on to these Confederate symbols so hard, too. It's because they see that other people, I guess, are not, you know, as accepting of bigotry as they used to be. So when they see them losing a battle that they cannot win, so they're going to fight it with everything they have.
Yeah, I'm hoping this is kind of a death throes kind of battle as opposed to something that's going to separate it. Because
it is.
I was like, let's just see America split up into Jesus Stan and then just the U.S. and see how long and
see which one's better exactly
exist with like the rich and the poor having a larger break and education being based on their version of the Bible. I mean, every time a state's like, we say the Bible's our official book, I'm like, which one? Can you at least agree on what book? Because you can't possibly do that. I don't see it happening.
I was glad to see Tennessee governor veto that bill.
I know.
It was actually, I think it was going to be, who was it going to be? It was somebody of the Confederacy's Bible was actually going to be the official book. Yeah, and then he was like, no, because he said the Bible does not reflect, you know, everybody in this state. And I thought that was amazing that the Tennessee governor did that, because Phil Bryant, I don't know if you saw it, but there's a picture circulating where he signed, I can't remember which bill it was. He signed so many terrible ones. Getting an abortion basically in the second trimester and after is basically illegal now here too. He signed that one into law. it's a certain method they do 98% of the time, but that also affects women with having miscarriages as well. So, screw you got to bleed out, I guess. But he literally, I think it was that bill he was signing, but he literally has his gun on top of his Bible next to a biography of Ronald Reagan. It's like a caricature. Like, you can't, it's like something that somebody would make up, but this is the reality of who he is. I call him Phil Billy because it sounds like hillbilly, but Phil Bryant is just, he's like trying to become this ridiculous conservative caricature. And yeah, it's just awful.
Yeah, you definitely don't have a winner there, but that's what happens. But can you talk about your writing and what inspires you to put fingers to keyboard?
Okay, well, initially, before I now consider myself a progressive liberal, but before that, I was actually sort of into the Libertarian Party, but I left, I guess, because I was getting deeper into it and I saw inherent problems with some of their lines of thinking. And so, again, being the skeptic I am, I evaluated those beliefs and came to the conclusion that I think progressivism is what is needed at the moment. And, well, there's a libertarian person I know, Jack Chris. He wouldn't describe himself as libertarian. He's more little L libertarian. There's a difference. He seems to think so, and I do too, to an extent. But anyway, he's a big fan of Ayn Rand, basically. And he asked me to write for him because he did notice even when I was libertarian, I was more liberal libertarian, and he was tired of seeing, the same old conservative libertarian articles. He wanted something different for the site he runs, which is bamsouth.com. Stands for Business Always Matters. They cover topics of politics, business, things like that. And also, he also wanted a woman's perspective, especially a feminist perspective. And so I started writing for him, and I've gotten some pretty good responses. But he says, I have also gotten the most hate. And he feels kind of bad, I guess, as an editor. He sort of has to be in a neutral position. But I can fend him off for the most part. But my biggest critics are middle-aged white women, which I found very interesting. It's men actually who read my articles tend to think that I make very good points. But so I write mostly about politics and things like that. I haven't been able to write as much as I would like to, just because I'm in my first year of law school, and the first year of law school is literal hell. And so I've been doing that. And then I got into writing for Removing the Fig Leaf on Patheos from Neil Carter and Sarah Moorhead. They posted on Facebook about asking if anybody would be interested in writing articles about religion and sexuality. And, I think coming from my extremist, evangelical boarding school experience, I had some valuable input to say on that. And I find it kind of therapeutic, actually, just to, what I went through, what I believe, because for so long I have a voice, especially going at a place like French camp where I was taught to, I literally put my head down and shut up because I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to, I would have gone somewhere much worse is what they told me. And I later found out I would have gone somewhere much worse. It's another institution called the Lighthouse. But yeah, it literally looks like a scary compound. If you look it up on Google Maps, it looks terrifying. So I definitely did not want to go there. So I literally kept my head down and my mouth shut. And so now I find through writing that it's, just a way that I can finally speak out and have a voice after being suppressed for so long. And I went through I have a minor in journalism, and I have minors in journalism and English. I have a degree in history. So, writing is just something I've always liked to do, but I've never been able to really write to, I guess, be impactful, if that makes any sense. And I know there's other people that have gone through similar situations to me, and if I can help just one person and let them know, hey, you're not alone, I want them pretty messed up stuff too, then it's totally worth it for me.
So sticking with the removing the fig leaf, so every time you have an orgasm, how many Mississippi laws are you breaking?
Every single one, I'm sure. And the legislator has a heart attack and a baby cries.
I was just wondering, if you polled all the legislators, how many of them had premarital sex? I mean, come on.
Oh, Well, it's different for them
Oh,
because,
it's
you know,
different.
they can
They're already there.
yeah, they can just take their mistresses over to Georgia to get an abortion. So it's
Right, because
different for them.
isn't there one abortion clinic in Mississippi or two? There's
There is. And they have tried and tried to shut it down.
uh,
They have tried and tried, and they're thinking they keep doing these infringements. Like what they did was they banned a method of abortion, which is often used after 3 months. This is the most common one. 95% of the time it's used. And also, it's commonly used when women have miscarriages because often you don't miscarry out all of it. So you need to have a doctor go in before you go septic or get a really bad infection or, other horrible health consequences that can happen. And, so he's done this as a pushback because the federal courts have said, hey, you can't make these kinds of restrictions before when they've tried to do things like say, okay, well, now you have to have hospital admitting privileges, things like that. And
yeah.
that are just completely ridiculous and not needed. They have a doctor on call 24/7. They actually have to fly, or they don't fly them in, but doctors that do abortions at this abortion clinic live out of state because it is too dangerous for them to live in Mississippi.
Yeah, that's one of the like
yeah.
You hear about like how the internet is allowing people to study and get to know things, but the internet also allows people to target people and abortion doctors and people work at it. I mean, it's just it's crazy. And yeah, the fact that they've come out of state does not surprise me at all. But when Donald Trump made that statement about women who get abortions when he makes it illegal have to be punished, I'm like, people were shocked. I'm like, women are getting punished now. And
now, yeah, Tennessee has a terrible law that says that, any woman that, well, they've already got a woman in jail because they're claiming that they're claiming that she used drugs which caused her to miscarry, and they're charging her with infanticide, essentially. It's completely ridiculous, and they're criminalizing women who were on drugs already, but now they're criminalizing women who get help. So it's like Catch-22. You can't win. And for little excess, and Mississippi is also an abstinence-only sex education state, and then yet these legislators are always shocked at how high the teen pregnancy rate is, and they're like, well, we told them not to do it, yet they keep doing it anyway. And I'm like, you idiots want to shake them. It makes me so angry. Then they cut off resources for single mothers. They cut off all these things. So they don't care about the freaking baby. They can say they're pro-life all they want to. They do not care. When you to expand Medicaid, when you pass laws that say that people that are on food stamps have to also volunteer 40 hours a week, when you pass laws like that, you do not care about children. And Mississippi also has the highest childhood poverty rate. And we have that is the third world countries. It is comparable to third world countries how bad our infant mortality rate is. But yet, God forbid you had that abortion clinic open. And I actually used to work across the street from that abortion clinic at a restaurant called Roosters. And I would have to out. They would surround my car and be like, pray with us. And I remember I just had it. I rolled down my window and I said, you can get the fuck out of my uterus. And I just rolled on by. I'm surprised they didn't blow me up or something.
Yeah,
but I mean, that's what I had to live with.
That's something that, women deal with. Men don't have to, but the whole concept of abortion can never happen then bleeds into natural things. Someone has a miscarriage and then they have to basically hold on to the baby until 9 months, and there are potential health issues. I mean, it just drives me crazy that so many people think it's normal that abortion should never, ever, ever happen. And do you read any stories?
People die from
pregnancy. That being pregnant is freaking dangerous. I mean, my mom had to be bed rest for me for the last 3 months. Not that she didn't remind me of it, every week, but that just happens. And
yeah, people die. People still die of pregnancy. Like everybody acts like it's back in the 1800s, when the mother would die from childbirth, but that still happens. And there is literally no other medical condition that people wouldn't say, "Oh, you might die from this." Yeah, you can get whatever freaking surgery you want to. There is no other medical condition like that. And I just find that absurd. And people act as if, I'm going to want to wait until the baby's already out. And then I'm like, yeah, let's kill it. They make me, pro-life women into such, horrible, horrible, unnatural, unmotherly monsters. And when the reality is many women who've had abortions are mothers. Either they didn't have the resources or they didn't, whatever the situation is, maybe in health concerns, people have to make those choices. And if you don't like abortion, that's fantastic. Don't have one. That's your choice. But it's, again, when you try to push that agenda onto others is when I have the problem.
Yeah, it does seem to be a religious thing to go. Not only
it's very religious.
I believe this, but my belief should apply to you, like blasphemy laws. It's like, blasphemy to what? Like, if I don't believe in Yahweh, then sorry, no Yahweh. But that does happen a lot. But I would feel really like I had missed a big opportunity to not talk about SEC football here because, for all the interviewing you've done, I have a feeling you probably haven't talked about it very much. So
I haven't gotten to.
What's it like here? So is this the big year for Mississippi? Last year they came one insane, crazy Arkansas fumble, which I had to watch again today for winning the SEC West. By the way, I'm a Missouri grad, so the fact that Missouri's been to 2 SEC championship games and Mississippi's been to 0 just blows my mind. But the West is a little tough. Yeah. What about this year? What do you guys got? Do you have the squad to compete?
See, here's the thing. We have a saying, and it's supposed to be an uplifting thing where we're like, we are Ole Miss. And I use that kind of in both senses of the word because when we did that fourth and down, that's that awful, heart-wrenching Arkansas play, I was at that game, and I literally felt like somebody reached into my chest and crushed my heart in front of me. I literally could not believe what I saw. It was awful. And then they were like, oh, yeah, after I can't remember who it was. I think after LSU finally, fell off a wagon there, they were like, oh, yeah, y'all would have gone to the SEC championship if it wouldn't have been for that freaking fourth and down play. So I was like, of course, because we are Ole Miss. It just seems like the team just has some kind of curse on it. I don't know what it is, but it's like we come so close yet so far all the time. And, I think that's just might be partly a mental thing. We've beaten Alabama twice. We've beaten them here. We've beaten them at home. And hopefully we're going to go for a three-peat when they come back up here next year or this coming year. So that should be a hell of a game. But, we're beating teams like Alabama in their prime. Yet, Arkansas is what brings us down. So it almost feels like, I don't know, we're a little bit cursed. But, we've improved by length since the Houston Nut fiasco. When he broke that school record for most losses in a season, we were losing to teams like Jacksonville State, which, that's unheard of. SEC teams cannot lose to Jacksonville State. And, that was only a few years ago, if you think about it. And Hugh Freeze has just come in and turned the program around. Now, he's done very good with recruiting good players. He's done good with coaching. I am one of the people that, especially when we lost to a team like Memphis last year, too, I was, I saw some very much flaws of a play calling, and I was just like, man, if we had a Lane Kiffin, that would be awesome. I don't know how to feel about that now as having a play caller as well, but yeah, but I think what we've done really, really great with our recruiting, and I'm really happy to see it. But there are some people that are always gonna, be like, oh, we didn't do good as, when we got the Kimdichis per se, when we finally got both of them. And I think partly the us getting the Kimdichis and people like Laquan Treadwell, people want to come to Ole Miss program because it's, who doesn't want to play in the Sugar Bowl and, kick Oklahoma State's ass, just, yeah, I think that we're building a really exciting program here, and I'm ready to see what it does. But again, I think that, there's a little bit of that hang up with the, we are Ole Miss, and we always manage to screw up, the most basic things. I make a joke, every sport, at Ole Miss is like that. I need anxiety medication and heart medication to watch the games because, it's only we could manage to do things, that we do in both senses of the word, bad and good.
And the quarterback, Chad Kelly, came back, so that's a good sign as well.
Yeah, that's a good sign. And we were chanting at the Sugar Bowl, and Laquan Treadwell was up there with Chad Kelly. We were all chanting one more year, and I could tell he was just kind of smiling and waving and stuff. And I was just like, he ain't coming back. Laquan's gone. Laquan was just like, sorry. It was one of those smiles. I knew he was gone. I mean, that would have been amazing to have Laquan Treadwell back for another year, especially after that heart-wrenching injury against Auburn, which I saw that. It was the most disgusting sports injury I've ever seen in my life. And honestly, I didn't see how he was going to be able to play again. I thought he was done for the season. Yeah. And then he came back stronger than ever and I guess that injury may have helped him in some way because he felt like he had something to prove.
Yeah, he was a pretty high recruit. I mean, it's weird because I do a sports show, and I usually don't talk about sports on this show, but I had to bring it up. Laquan Treadwell, I mean, this is a sports thing that I don't know if it translates to anything else. Like, basically, he was Mississippi's, top wide receiver, and he made a catch against Auburn, and basically he was going into the end zone, and it would have put the game away. They would have won the game. And he gets tackled, and he basically tears every ligament in his knee while he gets tackled.
Every bone in his leg broke. It was awful.
And he
it was
fumbled, and Auburn got the ball, and they ended up coming back to win the game. So your team loses, and you lose one of your top players, who did luckily come back and 100%, and who knows, maybe a Tennessee Titan next year. But it was just one of those moments you're just like, oh man.
Oh, it was heart-wrenching. I remember that game. Yeah. We were all cheering because we thought he made it in the end zone. We were all screaming and cheering, yeah, Treadwell, chanting his name and stuff. And then I see one of the Auburn players go, pointing towards their end zone. And I'm like, why is that dude saying they got the ball? Whatever, just, throwing it off. And then later I was like, oh, no, they're saying somebody's injured. He was saying they had the ball. But, also, somebody signaled to, one of the people working on the sidelines that somebody was down. And then we were all like, oh no, oh no, again, we are Ole Miss. What happened? And, we see Laquan and we're like, oh, well, he fumbled, but he's going to get up. He's going to be okay. And then they bring out that, the little golf cart with a stretcher on it. And we were just like, oh no. And then we saw his leg and we were like, almost threw up. It was so bad. And I was just like, no. And then this girl behind me was an Auburn fan and she said, we broke y'all's favorite player's leg. Oh. I turned around and I said, bitch, you got 5 seconds to leave here or I will break your goddamn nose. She was gone. Because we all were like, oh, fuck you. I was like, I will go to jail. You just don't do that. I don't care who you're playing. I just hate unsportsmanlike conduct like that. Ain't no need in that.
We could do probably 2 hours just talking about the whole culture of, SEC football.
And the religious nature of it too. That's another thing. And I like Hugh Freeze, but one thing I do not like about him, which I don't care that he puts he quotes Bible verses on Twitter, you do you, whatever. I don't believe that BS, but, you can and you have the right to, whatever, as long as you're not harming anybody else. But I noticed one of the recruits, I can't remember who it was, but he said partly why he chose Ole Miss was because of Hugh Freeze's strong Christian faith. And I kind of feel like, religion is used often as a recruiting tool. And I don't know, that just feels icky to me. And I feel as if a lot of the athletes are pressured, because Hugh Freeze is such a big Christian into, sort of, I'm not saying that he's making them do it. I'm not making that accusation at all. But I just feel like, when such a hierarchical authoritative figure is, making these claims, I feel like a lot of players feel pressure to, believe or at least act as if they do the same things. And, it's like, they'll all gather around and pray for injured people, all that stuff. I don't know.
another thing
I just find their religious nature weird.
That's another thing that comes up, and let me know if I'm pushing you for time, but these, like, the guys who make it in the SEC, they're, of course, the elite of the elite. So they think they're like this higher level, and they've always been treated above. And then they get thrown the Christian faith, which tells you that you're the special chosen people. So they go for it because they already think they're blessed above anybody else. Like, there are a lot of people who succeed in life who just have extreme luck. But when it comes to, like, sports, like, you have it or you don't. And
yeah, and they say they say,
oh, it's because of God, and it's like, no, it's because of you, and you have to work so hard, and especially now, it's like, it used to be you could play multiple sports. Now, if you're a football star, you focus on that from like age of 10 on, and that you just work, and then the top guys make it.
Yeah, and then I actually used to work for the Ole Miss athletics department. But, yeah, you know, I see them work so hard. Like, I mean, I remember when I was an undergrad, I mean, granted, I was at the honors college working on a master's level thesis, too, and taking, you know, really more difficult courses than your average history major. But they, you know, it just, I would see them work so hard and, you know, having to do academics on top of all that. And then, you know, in the SEC, it's so competitive. Like, they probably train just as hard as people in the NFL. You know, with the weight trainings and stuff. And I remember seeing them after workouts, like my baseball players and things like that. They would just come in like exhausted out of their minds. I worked mainly with baseball and also football players, mainly defense. You know, and Ole Miss, we're known for our defense. So, you know, Sharks. So, yeah, that's it. Just seeing them work so hard and then be like, oh, it's because I'm blessed. Like, no, take credit for your own self. Take credit for your own work. And, you know, I just wanted to scream that, but, you know, I would just feel like, yeah.
What's the capacity at Ole Miss's stadium? Like, how many people fit in there?
We are expanding it right now, so I'm not sure.
Well, I was just thinking of it this way. Like, my parents have season tickets at the Titans Stadium, and that's 68,000. And that's pretty average for the NFL. But almost every SEC football stadium has higher capacity. Like LSU, Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, I feel like they're all 100,000. And they're almost all in small towns.
I just
they're not in big cities, and they fill it for a spring game.
I checked it, 60,580. Which actually, I'm kind of surprised it is so low.
Yeah,
but
I was like, I better step it up.
Yeah, we're expanding it, and I mean, there's still people that come in the town. Like that, we have a downtown square similar to many other, I'm sure, small towns, but not like super small to where there's like one stop sign, you know. But you know, you'll have your court downtown square, you know, and there's bars all around because one of the main things to do in Oxford is drink and eat. So, and we're very well known for both. You know, we're also have that reputation as a party school. Very much so, and it's rightly earned. But especially in law school, man, all we do is drink and study. It's amazing. But, you know, the square will be just jam-packed on weekends. You know, it's just amazing to me. And then we have other things. Like we have, you know, we're having a double-decker festival this weekend. We'll have a lot of music and art and things like that. It's just a lot of culture that goes on up here, just in the town itself and at the college. So, I mean, there's that, but yeah, football is, you know, and the Grove it's amazing to see the transformation of the Grove, because they literally have red and blue trash cans that pop up in the middle of campus. We have a beautiful, it's called the Grove. And that's literally what it is. It's just in the middle of campus, grass, people set up tents, and you wouldn't believe some of the tents people set up. I mean, they have chandeliers in there. They're serving mimosas and Bloody Marys. I mean, some of these tents look like people are getting married in them. And it's for a football game. And, you know, we all dress up for the football games, you know. It's not like you wear a football jersey and jeans. I mean, that's not how we do football in the South.
No.
You know, you wear good dresses, and I wear my cowboy boots, and you know, and we all get drunk in the Grove. And then, you know, the next day it's spotless, because Ole Miss actually also is the #1 most beautiful campus in America. And that's very much a reputation that we strive to hold on to and that we take seriously. So it's amazing how it just transforms overnight into like this massive party, and then the next day it's like it never happened. So I find the culture, very much football is very much a part of the culture here.
Very much so, and I'd say the next time Missouri travels to Ole Miss, I should go, but I have a feeling he might be elsewhere at that point, but we'll see. Unfortunately, that's one of the downsides of the SEC schedule is that there are 7 teams in each division, and you play one every year, and then you kind of rotate one. And so you play basically every 12 years you play at the other place. That's one of my problems. Yeah, but we all got to
play the SEC West, and we all beat each other up in the SEC West, between us and, well, Auburn kind of sucked last year.
Yeah. Well, I have family that lives in Baton Rouge, and I've gone to games down there, and Missouri's playing at LSU.
I'm sorry.
This year, which is the first time, I think, ever, and it won't happen again for 12 years. So, I need to go. Well, guess what day that is?
Stadium is
the same day of that is the day that Bobby and Ashley get married. So, yeah, we'll see. Probably might have to watch on the ESPN, right?
It'd probably be best. I think you're a better person for not having to go to Tiger Stadium. LSU and Ole Miss have a famous rivalry.
Yeah,
lately it's been, in past years it was just LSU beating us up over time and time again, but this year we've given them a run for their money. And actually at every sporting event we sing the national anthem. We always say, "Go to hell, LSU," in the middle of the national anthem. Every sporting event at Ole Miss, or who we're playing. We actually it's actually technically called the Magnolia Bowl when we play each other, but nobody really calls us that, but we do get a trophy. The trophy ain't fancy. It's like a wooden thing of Mississippi and Elk, but yeah, it's and some magnolias on it. But yeah, the LSU rivalry is real. We all I don't know if you remember, but College Game Day came to Ole Miss finally. And we ended up winning, and I remember everybody, Alabama's going to kick their ass. We're just here a courtesy or whatever, and that's the first time we ended up beating them. And Katy Perry was a guest. Remember, but she was throwing corn dogs at Lee and all of them, just, making fun of LSU, saying they smell like corn dogs and all that. That's a joke they have around there. And, yeah, I remember my civil procedure teacher, Professor Case, was actually saying, "I don't know about y'all, but Katy Perry is my god, because I know what I saw that day." Because she actually picked us to win, and she went and hit the bars in Oxford. And actually shocked to learn that they were even charging the to go to the bars that night. I just found that completely ridiculous. I'm like, and one of my football players was like, "Yeah," I was like, "Y'all are celebrating because of me." And, I'm not talking bench warmer football players. I'm talking starters, And I just found that ridiculous. But I didn't go out that night because I knew better. But I did get to head down the field goal post, and I did get to carry it out of a stadium. So that was my senior year here. And I stayed for law school. But that was one of my most special memories, I think, was seeing Katy Perry come down here and us raising hell and bringing down those field goals. And then we got to beat them again in Tuscaloosa. And hopefully we'll do it a third time. But
you can't compare what it's like SEC football. I mean, it is almost above the National Football League in terms of just popularity. Because I am so happy because Missouri, my alma mater, now plays in the South, so I get to go. I've gone to Tennessee a couple times. I went to the Georgia game, and it's just
on the East.
It's not
they put you on SEC East.
Many days. Yeah. It is odd because Missouri was kind of a confederacy during the Civil War, so yay for that. But it is odd to see Missouri, the furthest west school in the conference, to be in the East. But luckily we got them in a down period and got to go to a couple championship games and get trounced. But hey, at least we got there.
Yeah, but y'all are in the East. I mean, we just beat each other up so bad here in the West, because we got Alabama, then you got Ole Miss, and then, our annoying little brother, Mississippi State. Dak Prescott was doing pretty good there, but we quickly brought him down. I remember I was like, he should have just gone to the draft then. I didn't see his draft stock getting any higher, after we had. I mean, I remember seeing one of my freshman starters just tearing him up, and I was just like, Wow, I was actually kind of disappointed. I was expecting a better performance out of Dak Prescott, but it's what it is. Both my parents actually graduated from Mississippi State, so they're very pleased that I'm getting 2 degrees from us. Or at least my dad is anyway. I mean, my mom did too, but she actually, I think, I mentioned this on a podcast, but my mom died when I was to go to state.
So you don't own anything maroon then?
Not anymore. I mean, my daddy's got 2 other. I've got 2 half brothers, so maybe one of them will get to come. I've worked on my 2nd degree from here, and he makes fun of it. I mean, I think it's as long as I get an education, it's really the more important thing. But he's got jokes, but he hasn't had as many jokes as of recent because of State's track record there.
Yeah, I'd say now.
Yeah, we just beat each other up fast.
I've actually kept you even way longer than an hour, so let's call it. Let's call it a cutoff now. Okay. Morgan, where do people find you online? Obviously Sunday nights we know where to find you, but where else can we kind of hear your voice?
Okay, well, I'm on Twitter. Yeah, I'm on Twitter, as you know, at MoString. You can hear me rant about all kinds of things, just being salty in general. So it's at MoString. You can also email me at morgan@nrrpodcast.com. You can also find me writing for Removing the Fig Leaf on the Patheos blog and also bamsouth.com. That's BAMSouth.com. And you can find me on Facebook, Morgan Stringer of NRR, and I'm also on Facebook, Morgan L. Stringer. So I've got a pretty good presence, so just any of those places.
Easy to find. And when's that Cambridge trip start?
In June, mid-June. So
excellent. Sounds great. Well, if you want to support this show, you can be like Bobby, C, Hugh, and Teody, Men of Distinction, and support me on patreon.com, patreon.com/Zachrilege after 2 shows, Zachrilege. I can still spell it, so can you. Follow me on Twitter, like my Zachrilege Cast page on Facebook, and send all hate mail to zachrilege.cast@gmail.com. Thank you very much, Morgan, for being on tonight and adjusting your schedule.
You're welcome.
I would like to say stay safe. It's been so much fun. It's been like a pregame tailgate. But I'd like everybody to stay safe. If you need to chat, I'm available. If you're an atheist and feel alone, you're not alone. Reach out. Let's chat and get that human connectiveness that keeps people coming back every Sunday. Stay skeptical. I love all y'all, and good night.